of Trustees is here, led by Carmen Valdivia. Please stand. To the students, the men and women that just stood up, came to this country at your age, and they transformed our country. They've contributed to our country through the power of education, the power of perseverance, and trusting in God and their faith. And today, they represent for us what it is to persevere and to make good on getting the opportunity to live in freedom. So thank you, and thank you for being here. Members of the brigade and members of La Brigada, si se pueden parar, the courageous men who sacrificed going back that April to Cuba to try to free Cuba from the communist dictator Fidel Castro. Thank you for being with us. We also have with us Silvia Arondo. Silvia? Claudia Puig represents, whose father was a political prisoner, Ninolska. These women have been freedom fighters. Thank you. Our elected officials that are here, Commissioner Gonzalez, Rob Gonzalez, Senator Alexis Catalud, School Board Member Dan Espino. And then I think I'm done with introductions. If you think I needed to introduce you, stand up, and I'm good with that. But most importantly, Jose Marti, stand up, the students from Jose Marti. Hialeah Miami Lakes. Hialeah Gardens. Westland Senior. Barbara Goldman. Hialeah High Senior High. Miami Lakes Educational Center, and American Senior High. You're in for a special day. Today we remember the millions whose voices were silenced, whose liberties were stolen, whose human dignity was crushed under communist regimes that spanned continents and generations. As noted in the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation website, the remembrance is rooted in the conviction that the history of communist tyranny will be taught for future generations. And our governor, this governor, made sure that we enshrine this into the law, and that today, children throughout the state of Florida are receiving 45 minutes of that education so that they understand and never are confused by what freedom means. To all of you, our younger generation, your participation today underscores the truth that the fight for freedom is not historical. It is ongoing. Authoritarian communist dictators know no borders. And the values we mark today are the same values that safeguard our democracy, our civil society, and your future, our children. Let's pledge today that we commemorate this day with memory, with integrity, to remember accurately without glorifying or simplifying, and to teach history in all of its complexity. Solidarity with survivors and the population still oppressed, those in Cuba and Venezuela that are fighting for this same liberty today. We see you, we hear you, we're with you. An active defense, members of freedom, because remembrance means little if it does not motivate us to defend liberty, to strengthen human rights, and to build institutions that protect the dignity of every individual. Let us center the voices of those here with us and those who cannot be here. In the words of one survivor, we were exiled not from our homes, but from our future. Freedom is the future reclaimed. Let the future be our shared mission. Thank you, and God bless each of you. I now would like to introduce the Honorable Roberto Alonso, District 4 School Board Member and Vice Chair of Miami-Dade College Board of Trustees.
Good morning, everyone. It's truly an incredible honor to be here today together with you, but more importantly, with the over 250 students that we have here today from Miami-Dade County Public Schools, standing inside one of the most important buildings in our community, the Freedom Tower. As a school board member and a trustee here at Miami-Dade College, but most importantly, as the son of two Cuban immigrants who walked in through these very doors here of the Freedom Tower as Pedro Pan kids, this moment is deeply personal to me and one that I dreamed of for many, many years. This building isn't just a landmark. It's a living symbol of hope. It's where thousands of families fleeing communism were welcomed with open arms. Families like mine, my grandparents and my parents walked through these doors seeking freedom, opportunity, and a better life. My father used to tell me when he arrived in this country, he came here with an empty suitcase, and many of you will see our suitcase exhibit as you come by. And it was empty. It was empty because the communist regime took everything away from them and sent them here with nothing. But to my father, he came with a suitcase that was full. It was full of dreams. It was full of dreams that he was going to be able to have as a reality here in this great country. And more importantly, what it is that you guys are here for today, an education. Because he told me that education is the one thing that nobody can ever strip away from you. That belief is why we're here today. Because education and freedom go hand in hand. We gather here today, as Madam President said, to remember the millions of victims of communism, those who have been silenced, imprisoned, or lost their lives under the communist regimes of Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, China, and across this world. Their stories must never be forgotten. And to you, our students that are sitting here today, you are the future leaders of this great nation. You must always remember that freedom is never guaranteed. As President Ronald Reagan once said, freedom is never more than just one generation away from extinction. It must be fought for, it must be protected, and it must be handed on to our children. That responsibility sits with you all. The United States has always been and will continue to be a beacon of hope for those escaping tyranny. This Freedom Tower stands as a reminder that liberty is precious and that each of us must do our part to protect it. I want to thank Governor DeSantis for preserving this historic building for future generations to come here and to truly understand what it is that communism is. I also want to thank our Commissioner of Education for his commitment to ensuring that our students learn the truth about history. Because when we forget history, we risk repeating it. And of course, I want to thank Madeline Pumariega, our president here, our fierce leader at the college, for hosting our students. You see, this all started as a dream one day as we were walking through the Freedom Tower under construction, and I told her, I dream of the day that I can bring students from Hialeah, from Miami Lakes, from Hialeah Gardens, from our school district to see what it is that our families went through, and we're here today. So let us never forget the victims of communism. Let us honor their sacrifices by protecting the freedoms they dreamed of. And let us leave here today inspired to defend liberty, not just for ourselves, but for the future generations that would come. May we always stand united as one, as Americans, in gratitude for the freedom we enjoy and the generations who fought for it all. And now it is my great honor to introduce the leader of our state, the great state of Florida, who has always worked to preserve our history, to protect our freedom, and champion education for our students throughout our state. Please join me in welcoming Governor Ron DeSantis.
Thank you. Oh, thanks so much. Great to be at the Freedom Tower. Great to be back in Miami. I want to thank everybody, thank Madeline for her great work. I really believe that when you look around the country at the state and community college level, I don't think there's any institution that is more influential or has the potential to continue to be more than here in Miami-Dade College. I want to thank, I know we got a lot of our board members. Some of you guys have been great. I mean, I see Marcel, just amazing, always a true warrior fighting the good fights with us. And we made promises through the years about what we would do for both Miami-Dade and the Freedom Tower. And I'm happy to say, like all the promises we made, promises made, promises kept, we've delivered on the support for this great. And, you know, I'm coming in, I mean, there's horrible traffic getting here. I'm coming in, and, you know, you're looking, you know, the skyline or whatever, but, like, you know, you see, like, a condo building or this, and then you see the Freedom Tower, and the architecture was so much better. You know, it's like we've got to preserve. I mean, we should be doing all the buildings like this. So we're really excited to be able to play a part in preserving, you know, this unique institution. And then we've got our education commissioner who's from Miami, Stasi Kamoutsas, who's doing a great job. Really dropping the hammer on anybody that thinks they have their own agenda that they can do, or anybody that thinks they're going to violate the rights of parents or try to smuggle in ideology. And so I think it's been great what he's been able to do. And yeah, I think we're probably the only state in the country that has a day to commemorate the victims of communism. And as was mentioned by Madeline, there is instruction in the schools that will talk about this. And I think it's important to talk about, in a very clear-eyed way, the destruction, the lives, 100 million dead at the hands of Marxism, Leninism. But I think it's also important that we just recognize the whole absurdity of it all, of the whole idea of communism and Marxism, Leninism. And nobody understood that better than President Reagan. And he used to tell a story about Castro's Cuba. And so for those of you who are exiles or have heard the stories, I mean, you know, this guy would get up there and he would drone on for 4 hours, and basically all the problems they had was all America's fault, and all the others said this is the nonstop propaganda. And these people are basically just forced to sit there and listen and have to endure this, because if they did anything, then they basically be disappeared. It was an authoritarian country. And so Castro's given this speech, and he's droning on and on and on. All of a sudden, and there's thousands and thousands of people there, you hear out in the distance someone yelling, peanuts, popcorn, Cracker Jacks, and people are like, what the hell's going on? And Castro kind of notices it, and then next, peanuts, popcorn, cracker, and then you start to hear this, and he's really flustered. And so finally he's like, all right, I don't know who's saying that, but if you say that one more time, I am going to take your butt and ship you all the way to Miami. And then 2 seconds later, the entire crowd erupted. Peanuts, popcorn, Cracker Jacks. And you can tell what a system does or doesn't do, because the traffic between Cuba and Florida through the Florida Straits was 100% one way. If communism was so good and America was so bad, wouldn't people want to get on a raft and go over to that island? I mean, it's a beautiful island. You know, I have a little bit of experience as a naval officer. I was at Guantanamo Bay for a period of time. And so you see beautiful topography, beautiful coastline, And honestly, had they had a free government these last decades, it would be the most prosperous, country in Latin America, I think, without question. So, so it ain't like this is like in the middle of the desert somewhere where there's just nothing there. This is a great piece, a great island. And so they have this system. And if it's so great, wouldn't one boat have wanted to go to? No, that wasn't. And so sometimes we can talk about theory, we can talk about facts and figures. All you got to do, how did people behave? And there were people that risked their lives to be able to escape Castro's communist Cuban tyranny and come to the United States of America. There was no one who was trying to leave the United States to go there. And it's important that we understand, particularly young people, understand, because I don't think the Cold War was won, all this, but this ideology doesn't fully go away. And it comes back and it's repackaged, and they try to do it under various different banners. And so you have to understand what's at stake here. And I think with America's 250th anniversary approaching next summer, it's a great opportunity for young people to both appreciate the American founding principles and then to see how communism, how Marxism, Leninism is totally at war with the ideals that our founding fathers instituted. And the results, obviously, when you have 100 million dead, that's a pretty poor track record for Marxism, Leninism. But our founding fathers understood a couple things. I mean, one, they believed, and our society is based on the idea, that our rights do not come from the government, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. And so God has endowed individuals with these natural rights. Then the people form a constitution, and they loan power to the government to primarily protect the rights that we already possess and to be able to order society in ways that are beneficial. But it's not about government giving you freedom. You have freedom. Government's role is to protect your freedom. And that was really a lot different than what people had thought previously. What does communism think? Well, communism, they don't acknowledge any higher being. The highest being in communism is the Communist Party and the dictatorship that comes from that. And so that's what Castro put himself up as. That's what they did in the Soviet Union. You look at China. What's the most important entity there? What does everything revolve around? It revolves around serving the CCP and the Communist Party. So they don't recognize a superior being or a higher power. So therefore, if they don't recognize a higher power, then as an individual, what is your worth? Well, they can't say we're endowed by our creators. They don't believe that. And so basically, as an individual, you are simply a ward of the state. The CCP in China, the Castro dictatorship, the old Soviet Union, they determine, you know what, there was freedom in the Soviet Union. Honestly, there's some freedom in Cuba, only for the people connected. The people that are connected to the Communist Party, they live like kings, while everybody else lives like peasants. And so, if you know the right person, if you toe the party line, maybe you will be given freedom. But it's all based on the whim of the state. It's all based on what the Communist Party says. And that is totally contrary to what America was founded upon. We had a founding fathers. They didn't do it for themselves. When Castro led the revolution against Cuba, had all these people that they considered themselves kind of more outcasts of society. It was kind of like the proletariat and all the rhetoric or whatever. And obviously that didn't work out very well, but our founding fathers were very accomplished. They were the movers and shakers in the colonies. When they met in Philadelphia and signed the Declaration of Independence, that is not like just emoting on social media like people would be today, or just popping up. This was, they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. And that wasn't hollow rhetoric. If they did not succeed in achieving revolution, the penalty 100% would be death for every single one of them. And so they basically signed their own death warrant, and then they had to win an improbable victory. So they had a lot to lose, and honestly, much less to gain personally, but it was the principle about whether people can govern themselves or not. And you've seen how America, and look, we have ups and downs in this country. You know, we've got problems that we deal with even today, major problems. But no country has given more people more opportunity in all of human history than the United States of America. And that wouldn't have happened unless those folks stood up and fought. And so as part of America 250, we're really leaning into this. You know, we have some of our counties, most of them are far away from Miami-Dade, although one of them is just south of you guys, Monroe. But we've got counties named after founding fathers. And so we've brought a statue of Thomas Jefferson to Jefferson County. We brought a statue of Ben Franklin to Franklin County. I got George Washington. I got a statue, beautiful statue loaned from Mount Vernon that we put in the Florida Capitol. So if you go into the Florida Capitol, you want to go to the governor's office, you hang that left, you see G-Dub right there, looking really good. We're going to bring, and it's interesting because there's all these other states that have different you know, a lot of states not only would not do victims of communism day of force, they may view it a little bit differently. So it's like they've been taking statues down of America's founding fathers over the last decade. This has been something that's kind of become a cottage industry. So it's allowed us, I'm getting like Alexander Hamilton on discount from some of these states because it's in the basement. We get it. I mean, it should be a $100,000 statue. I'm getting it for $30,000. So we have good opportunities to do this. So we're going to do Hamilton in Hamilton County, Madison, father of the Constitution in Madison County, and we are going to do James Monroe down in Monroe County. I got to figure out which key we're going to drop old James in, and so we're working on that. But we really believe that it's important for folks to understand it's a very important part of human history. And if you look at what they did, you know, people will point out the flaws, this, that. Yeah, I think that's fine. But understand, if they hadn't have done that, you would not have seen different folks succeed across racial, ethnic. They set the principles in motion that has allowed a lot of people to realize dreams over many, many decades and even the centuries. So it's really important that we do that. We're going to continue to do more on that. Now, in Florida, we don't just talk, we act, because I think while words can be meaningful, it's ultimately your deeds that are the most powerful. And so we weren't just going to sit here, do an event at the Freedom Tower, say how bad communism is, and think that we've done our duty. No, we knew that this needed to be something that was enduring and permanent part of our education system. So we were able to sign bills into law doing a number of different things. One, of course, we have officially established November 7th as the Victims of Communism Day in the state of Florida, which is the first in the nation to do that. But we're also leading the effort to educate our students on the evils of communism. We have obviously, I mean, we have people in this room who are have firsthand experience with communism. There's people in this room who have grandparents who suffered under communism. And it's not just Cuban Americans, by the way, because, you know, Florida is really we've attracted people from Eastern Europe during the Cold War. You know, people that have done that. You see people in South Florida with that as well. So this was, you know, abroad. I mean, I'm working with Taiwan on different stuff. And so they know firsthand. And so we've got Taiwanese Americans. We've got a lot of, but our Victims of Communist topics for the students will go over Lenin and the Russian Revolution, Joseph Stalin and what he did during the Soviet. You know, Stalin, I mean, if you looked at him the wrong way, you were gone. I mean, they would just kill you, like almost on the spot. He was responsible for millions of people dying under his regime. Mao Zedong and the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution. Nobody has a higher body count in the history of communism than Mao Zedong, because he was doing things like the Great Leap Forward, which was trying to centrally plan the economy, and you'd have massive famines, and so people are dropping like flies because they couldn't get any food. And so it was just a total train wreck of policies. And then the Cultural Revolution was really just trying to indoctrinate into the party line and really created a dystopia there. They have to learn about Fidel Castro and the Cuban Revolution and the communist takeover of Cuba. Look about what he was promising when he took power, and then look what ended up happening. One of the most failed episodes in governance in all of human history is the Castro regime in Cuba. And our students need to know that, and they need to appreciate that. Pol Pot and Khmer Rouge, the modern fall of the Soviet Union, as well as Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro and what they're doing in Venezuela, or what Chavez did and what Maduro continues to do. And let's just be clear, none of that probably would have been able to happen without the communist regime in Cuba helping to support that and prop that up as well. So our students are going to go into this very wide-eyed. We think it's important. We're also going to be adding, and I know Stasi will talk about this in upcoming academic years, students to be given instruction on the history of communism within the United States, the domestic communist movements, including tactics that were used. We just had a guy elected in New York City, elected the mayor. I came up to the podium and I quoted Ronald Reagan. He came up to the podium and quoted a guy named Eugene V. Debs, who was a communist. And so you see that. So we will provide instruction on that. One of the things I'm happy about is Senate Bill 1254, which authorizes the newly established Institute for Freedom in the Americas at Miami-Dade College to partner with our Adam Smith Center for Economic Freedom at Florida International University, with the goal of promoting the importance of economic and individual freedoms as a means to advance human progress. And they will have a specific focus on how these policies can have a beneficial impact throughout the Western Hemisphere. And I will tell you, we've not had a great run in the Western Hemisphere recently. You look at the leader of Colombia, Brazil, obviously Cuba, Venezuela, always a problem. We've got a couple bright lights in the West. For a while we had, a Prime Minister of Canada who I think was a Marxist too, Trudeau. And his mom was very close with Fidel Castro in maybe more ways than one. So, so you have this, and it's like, I'm sitting there during COVID, and people are fleeing down from Canada because he's locking down everybody, and they're seizing bank accounts from the truckers, and they're doing all this stuff. And I'm thinking, who would have thought that in North America we would be dealing, with some of this stuff? So it hasn't been a great run. So I think that what Miami-Dade College and what Adam Smith Center will be great for the students first and foremost, and great for South Florida. But I also think it's going to have resonance because people need some inspiration. People need some hope in some of these parts of our hemisphere that things can be better, and they can be better. So I want to thank everybody that's been involved with all of this over the years. I can't think of a place that in this country that has a more instinctive understanding of the dangers of communism than we have in our South Florida communities. So thanks to everybody that's been involved. Thank you to the folks in my administration and in the legislature who've worked really hard to do this. I don't know if we have any legislators here today. I know I saw some people, saw some school. Okay, yeah, great. And then, Gonzalez is here, Commissioner. This guy's really good, Rob Gonzalez, and the Commission. So there's been a lot of hard work that's gone into this, and honestly, I even think, I think a lot of this ended up being bipartisan, to be honest with you. So we did have folks in both parties that have supported a lot of this over the years, and I'm just proud to be able to be here and say that today is meaningful. We were a little lighthearted about the Reagan quip, but the reality is this ideology has destroyed communities, families. It's taken lives by the tens of millions, certainly at least 100 million in the 20th century alone. And we can't forget that. And we just got to know, let our students understand what the harmful effects would be. Because people can say these things, they can always promise these things, And then it always ends up being the same old song and dance, and it leads to human misery. Okay, our education commissioner is going to come wrap it up. The indomitable Stasi Kamoutsis. Thank you.
Well, can we give it up for that history lesson from the greatest governor in America, Ron DeSantis? Imagine where you all would be at if you had a lesson like that every day, where you're hearing from the governor who can tell you time and time again why some of these messages are so problematic. I know that it truly resonates to be in an environment like this where you have so much enthusiasm, so much passion towards an ideology that so many of us have been negatively impacted by. Everybody knows that I'm Greek with a name like Anastasios Kamoutsis, but what folks don't realize is that I'm also Cuban. And when I come here and have heard the stories of my grandparents who fled communist Cuba, like you, board member Alonzo, with nothing but the clothes on their backs, those were the stories of victims of communism that every student in this state and in this nation should hear about so that they understand, critically understand why they believe in what they believe in. Thanks to this governor, we ensure that on this day, every year, November 7th, is Victims of Communism Day, where students across the state in high school will receive 45 minutes of instruction related to this. Now, I remember when the governor passed this, this passed through the legislature and the governor signed the bill, there was a big event that was taking place, and I see my good friend, Senator Calatayud, who has definitely behind the scenes done quite a bit of advocacy as it relates to this constitutional republic and spreading the message on the evils of communism. But I remember she was at the event. I remember many were at the event. And it was on November 7th, 2022, the day before the governor's reelect. And you know what the media said? Well, they picked November 7th because it was the day before the governor's reelect because he wanted to use it as an opportunity to campaign, which was horrible. It was horrible, but these were the kind of attacks that this governor has often faced to be able to champion liberty and freedom in this state. The reality is, if you know the actual history, November 7th, 1917 was when the Bolshevik Revolution began in Russia, and that is why on November 7th we talk about Victims of Communism Day. And so this is an incredible honor to be here. I'm so thankful to be in my hometown, Miami. My mom still lives in Hialeah, right behind Westland Mall, so they're the Hialeah folks that are in the house. But it's also important to remember that this is a solemn day that is not only about remembering the oppression and suffering caused by these communist regimes, but remembering and honoring those who lost their lives or who were negatively impacted. I think of my grandmother, Ida Vives, who still lives here in Miami, and my father, Reinaldo Vives, who unfortunately is in hospice right now and in his last days. Their families were torn apart. My grandmother had 13 siblings. Many of them stayed and died in Cuba. I remember it was like mission trips. As a kid growing up, she would go over there because she didn't trust the communist government in Cuba. She didn't trust that the money she was sending was actually making it to our family because they often said, we did not receive the money you had received. And so she would go over there, she would bring these massive bags wrapped up, you've seen it at the airport, in saran wrap, to be able to bring supplies like food, to be able to bring canned goods, clothing, medicine. I have cousins in Cuba that when their 3-year-old has a fever, they're putting the child in a cold bath because they do not have Tylenol. That's the medical services that they receive, even though the communist government would have you believe that they have the greatest healthcare system in the entire world. It's not true. And it's important you hear the anecdotes from the people that were directly impacted. It's important you receive this instruction to understand what these ideologies lead to. And so I'm thankful that on Victims of Communism Day, students learn about the atrocities committed under the communist governments, including famines, forced labor camps, political persecution, and systemic suppression of freedom and faith. People don't realize in Cuba, for years, There were underground churches that were taking place because you could not profess your faith publicly or you would be prosecuted, you would be imprisoned, you would be executed. We are so blessed to live in a country where so many of our families came to be able to have that American dream where they could simply, freely practice their religion without persecution. We talk about Vladimir Lenin, Joseph Stalin, Mao Zedong, Fidel Castro, Pol Pot, Nicolas Maduro, Hugo Chavez. These are not just names in a history textbook. They are warning signs. They are stark reminders of what happens when the government replaces truth with ideology and liberty with control and the abuse of power. When students comprehend the horrors of communism, they are inspired to appreciate and defend our freedoms. In 2024, the governor, he mentioned that he signed Senate Bill 1264, which created the Institute of Freedom here in the Americas, that promotes this idea of democracy and individual liberties, particularly in Central and South America and Latin America. And there are so many people that serve on that board that I'm particularly grateful for. But one of them was actually my professor at FIU, Orlando Gutierrez Boronat. Anybody know who that is? Let's give it up for Orlando. He is a huge member of this community, a Cuban exile that has fought for years so that students understand the perils and the evils of communism. And so I'm so thankful that the governor appointed him to the Institute of Freedom for the Americas. They're doing incredible work, and I thank everybody who serves in that capacity. But as the governor mentioned, as a result of that legislation, there were also standards that our State Board of Education are going to vote on next week as it relates to communism. Specifically, comprehensive instruction on the history of communism is now going to be provided to you students in addition to the 45 minutes of instruction that you are receiving every November 7th on the history of communism. As a result of that legislation, the Department of Education and Florida educators and content experts across the state developed these new rigorous standards, which are built upon lessons to teach not just the perils not just during Victims of Communism Day, but also to provide students with a deeper understanding of how communist regimes have suppressed freedoms, have abused powers, and inflicted suffering across the board. And so you're going to see, I'm sure there's going to be some media attention related to that. There's been some hacks over at the Tampa Bay Times that have criticized these standards, but we stand firm in what they represent and what our students are going to be able to be taught. It is now more than ever that students understand the dangers of communism. Too many of our youth have been captivated by politicians, pop culture figures, and social media influencers promising the false hope of equality without the freedoms that will be stripped away as a result. When you see individuals who are promising programs like free buses, free child care, rent freezes, punitive taxes on the wealthy, and government-run grocery stores, my grandmother tells me she saw very similar policies being put forth in Cuba before Castro took over. And so it's important, as you learn about the history of communism, that you think critically. You think through these policies and think, who's going to pay for this? What is going to be the impact as a result? And so you have these individuals, time and time again, they come around from time and time, where we call them the silver-tongued conmen, who eventually turn to strongmen in order to achieve their sick and twisted political ideology. And they're clever. They push this communist agenda in a way that often people are bamboozled. And so it's important that we teach these policies so that students are able to critically think for themselves and see and recognize them as they become adults. To the victims of communist regimes and their families, Florida will always remember and honor you today for standing up against oppression and corruption. And as long as I serve as commissioner, we will never forget your stories. We will teach every student that freedom must be defended and it can never be taken for granted. To our teachers that are implementing these standards and teaching today on Victims of Communism Day, thank you. Thank you for helping our students understand how once prosperous countries can turn themselves into devastating wastelands under communism. And to our students, you are the guardians of freedom. You must recognize them and protect them. And the promise of equality without freedom is no future at all. Today we honor the victims of communism by ensuring that its lies never find a way in the homes of our Floridians, not now, not ever. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Senator, get up. Come on up here. Robert, get up here.
Max, Carmen,
Max.
Where are the rest of them at?
right here. They're all getting ready.
Got it.
Yep.
So Madeline has got these great challenge coins, Freedom Tower, beautiful. And then on the other side, it's State of Florida seal, Victims of Communism Day. And so we're going to hand them out to a bunch of folks up here, but take a look at these. These are really nice, so thank you.